My name's Sarah Waddell with W's for Horsemanship, and thank you for joining me today. So I posted a couple of pictures of me working with Miss Remuda here off of this telephone post, using it as a snubbing post. And I had a couple of people ask me, how do you go about doing that? A snubbing post is kind of an old time way of getting a horse to give to pressure and things like that. And there's a multitude of ways that you can use a snubbing post to benefit your training on horses. The way that I go about using a snubbing post is preparing a horse to give to pressure and preparing them to become hard tied. The way that I go about utilizing it is wrapping my lead around it and kind of getting pressure from the halter with especially Mustangs and stuff like that have never been hard tied before. Miss Remuda is just a little bit over 30 days out of holding here, and we're getting ready to start hard tying her. We've getting her to give to pressure and stuff like that, but she's not quite ready to be hard tied because yesterday when I started to use the snubbed post, she kind of sat back, and when pressure was coming from different areas from her, she really kind of panicked and she wanted to evade and set back into pressure and fight it versus softening into it. So that's why I really like to utilize a snubbing post, so that you can put pressure on your horse in different areas, and that they see that pressure is going to come from different areas, and that they still have to soften to that pressure no matter where it's coming from, or even if there's multiple points that it's coming from, that they still have to soften into it. So it's a really good way to get your Mustangs or horses that haven't been touched or handled, that you're halter breaking and stuff like that, to prepare them for being hard tied and kind of put them in a stressful scenario that's very controlled, so that way you can minimize them getting hurt, the chances of them getting hurt and hurting themselves. Snub and posts, typically when it comes to snub and posts, they're a lot shorter. They're generally about this high. They're not a telephone pole, and so they're not generally 20 feet up into the sky. But this is what I have for right now, so I'm utilizing what I have as a snubbing post. You want something that's nice and stout and solid, so if a horse does decide to set back, or there's going to be a lot of pressure set on it, that it's not going to pull out of the ground and make a stressful situation even more stressful. Now, I haven't actually received any formal education when it comes to utilizing a snubbing post. I've watched videos, I've seen other guys utilize them. I myself have never had anybody teach me how to utilize them. And so yesterday when I was doing it and I posted a couple pictures, I had a couple of recommendations for Mr. Brett Davis. And if you don't follow Brett Davis on YouTube or any other social media platforms, his training page is The Art of Horsemanship. I highly recommend it. He's one of the guys out there that I truly believe is one of the far and few between true horsemen left of today's day and age, who understands the horse, who knows how to read a horse and knows what to do based off what the horse is telling him to do. He knows when to push, he knows when to step back, and he does an amazing job. And so what I'd been doing in the past when I had utilized the snubbing post is I had wrapped within the direction of travel that I was pushing that horse, where he had recommended in my Facebook post to wrap in the opposite direction of travel. So I'll show that to you guys here in a minute. Let me push off Miss Reba here. She's wanting to be involved with this, and we don't need her involved. Here recently, within the last few days, I've actually introduced Reba to bringing her in here to the pen with Remuda to kind of start getting her dynamics going and stuff like that. She's an amazing horse to introduce to new Mustangs and stuff. If you got something that's really timid, she's absolutely amazing for it. I mean, she'll share her grain with the colts if they're being picked on by everybody else and stuff like that. And at the same time, if you got something that's super pushy, she'll put them in their place. She knows where to set boundaries, but she's not going to go around and bully horses simply because she's the lead mare. she's an amazing horse for introducing when I have new Mustangs and stuff like that, to see, you know, kind of how they interact and mingle with other horses, because she can handle both ends of the spectrum. So she's in here for that reason, but we're just going to ignore Miss Reba here. So before I get to using the snubbing post, like I said, Miss Remuda is about a month out of holding here with me, a little over a month. We've been working on giving it pressure and release. She's really good at leading around. Mom, there's a couple of times there where she kind of braces up. I'm carrying the whip here, so she's kind of like, do I need to follow you when you have the whip? But she's really good at giving pressure. I've actually put in quite a few rides on her and stuff like that already, but I haven't hard tied her yet. And so I want to make sure that when I hard tie her, she truly understands how to give to pressure, so that when I do hard tie her for the first time, she's not going to panic and freak out and injure herself. So a couple of things before I start utilizing the snubbled post that I make sure that my horses know how to do is, first I want to make sure that they know how to give to pressure. If I pull on that lead rope, they're going to bring their head down, not just back up. Because if they back up, that's evading pressure. This pulling on the nose, if I were to pull back on the halter here, that's asking her to back. If I were to pull back on the halter and put pressure across the bridge of her nose of the halter, that's asking her to give back like this. If I were to pull straight down like this, I want her to give when there's pressure on the pole and bring her head down and soften to that pressure. The next thing I want to make sure is that I have control of the shoulders and the hips. With a whip, I want to make sure that I can touch her with this whip and she's not going to bug her out and freak out over the whip. The whip is an extension of me. I don't want to desensitize her to the whip to where she doesn't respond to it, but I want this whip to be an extension of me. So if I were to tap her on the hip and ask her to disengage her hind end, just like as if it were an extension of me, if I were to come and ask her with my body to move that hip, she's going to do that. When it comes to utilizing whips and flags and stuff like that, it is literally just an extension of me and my arm. I want to make sure that I can ask her to move her shoulders over and have control of that body and be able to move her shoulders over with the whip as well. So once I have that her to the point where I know that if I were to put pressure here and she were to walk forward, if I were to put pressure on the halter here and she were to drop her head, and I were to take this whip and tap her on the hip, she's going to disengage the hip just like that. If I were to take this whip and go on the shoulder, and she's going to move the shoulder over, and it's going to be nice and calm and smooth. She's not evading pressure, but she's softening to it. Now we're going to start utilizing the snubbing post. But I'm trying to teach her here. There we go. That pressure can come from all different sorts of areas. And that no matter where the pressure is coming from, and no matter how many areas pressure is coming from, that she still needs to soften to that pressure. And we're doing it in a controlled environment so that there's very minimalized chances of her actually getting injured. And so you could see me holding the lead up here because I'm trying to hold the point up, so that way, you know, it's not super down here kind of deal. We want to mimic as if she was being tied. There we go. There we go. And we just want to work on being able to put pressure on from the side here at the same time as pressure coming from the halter. There we go. Now I'm going to let her stop and think about that for a second because she's getting kind of huffy. And I want to make sure that she's getting the reward and the release that she deserves for trying. I don't want to push her too far to where she's not trying anymore. I want to make sure that she's comfortable with what we're doing and that we're rewarding the try. So we're going to put this back up here. I'm going to kind of hold it up for a sec. There she's stepping into the whip, so I'm going to get after her a little bit more. There we go. And it's kind of the same concept as lunging, except instead of the lead being connected to you, it's connected to a post. And so it's a little bit different for a horse to learn because they have to understand that they have to give to pressure from coming from a couple different areas at once versus just you. Good. Ooh. Good. Now, yesterday was the first day we've really kind of attempted this. And so we're not quite perfect at it quite yet. As you can see. There we go. But what I really like to see is the fact that when she comes around this post and it gets tight, she's not bracing and setting back against it. And we're going to try going this direction here and see how well she does, because we didn't do this direction yesterday. And we want to make sure that she's softening to pressure, not evading pressure. And so I'm going to bring the whip down here for a second because she's kind of evading pressure from me. There she kind of braced, but she decided to soften into it. And that's why we take the dolly around the post, because when she kind of braced and set back, I was able to control the amount of pressure. Ooh. Instead of, making it an extremely hard stop, I was able to make it a soft stop for her. And here she's just a little bit kind of confused because we haven't done this direction before. So that's why we're taking it slow. There we go. One step in the right direction is a good step. Reward the try. There we go, good girl. And Mustangs tend to be a little bit more defensive of their right sides, because a lot of the stuff that's done at the corrals and the holding facilities is all done on their left side. So generally they're a lot more guarded and defensive on their right sides because they haven't had actually any human exposure on the right side. There she kind of wanted to get hard. There we go. There she wanted to get kind of hard. There we go. Good. Woo. We're actually going to stop. She's getting pretty blowy right here. And Remuda's really good about trying really hard. She wants to play, so I want to make sure that I reward the try with her. I want to make sure that I'm not creating a negative experience with her, because she's the type of horse that a negative experience can really set her back really quickly, because she is pretty reactive and really, really sensitive. So I'm going to give her a moment here to kind of process and think before we start and ask again. Especially since this is the first time that we've done it in this direction. There we go. And when she's going, I just drop the lead and drop the whip. There we go. Just kind of controlling this. There. But here you can see there she wanted to get hard. Bring her back in. Let her stop and marinate for a second before moving on. She thought about setting back and she kind of pulled back, and I controlled the release and the amount of pressure that was applied to her. And when she softened, brought her back in and then released. But the point of this, as you can see, I'm applying pressure to her side, and at the same time, she's getting pressure on the halter. And so she's getting pressure from multiple areas. So from me, with the whip, she's getting pressure on her shoulder, as well at the same time when I'm holding that whip up, I'm applying pressure to her hip. With the whip, when I'm walking around like this, applying pressure to her shoulder and her hip, and I'm utilizing my right hand here to apply pressure to the halter at the same time. So she's getting pressure from 3 separate areas all at once, and she's learning to soften into that pressure no matter where it's coming from, whether it's coming from the shoulder, from the hip, or from the halter. She has to soften into that pressure. The other reason why I really like utilizing this, snub and post and doing this, is because it teaches them that when they're tied up, when they feel the pressure of the halter, that they really need to soften and give to it. And it teaches them at the same time too, even though that there's pressure on the halter across their pole and they feel trapped, that they can still move their hind end and they can still move their shoulder at the same time. Now my space. And so not only is it applying a pressure from a multitude of different areas, but it's teaching them that no matter where that pressure is coming from, that they're not trapped, that they don't need to fight that pressure, that they can soften into it. And so this is something that is really, really beneficial for prepping a horse for hard tying. And this is something too that I utilize if I have a client horse that they send me for training. If they have an issue with setting back, this is also something that I do with a horse that has a problem with setting back, because it teaches them that they can still move their feet and that they're not actually trapped, but it also teaches them that they need to soften to pressure if it's coming towards the hip like this, if it's coming towards the shoulder like this, or if it's coming from the halter like this. It teaches them that they can have pressure applied all across from head to toe pretty much of their body, all the way from their pole, all the way to their hip. They can have pressure applied. I'll turn the horse sideways here. They can have pressure applied here at the pole, here at the shoulder, and at the hip at the same time. So this is a majority of the length of the horse's body that they're getting pressure applied to. And that's a big area for a horse to get pressure applied to ask them to move. And for them to learn that they need to soften into it, no matter if it's just pressure applied here, pressure applied here at the shoulder to move the shoulder, or pressure applied at the hip to move the hip around. And then all three at the same time, they still need to learn that no matter if it's just one place or 3 places, all at the same time, they still need to be able to soften and give to that pressure.